and gentlemen, I was honored to be part of the committee of experts, and therefore I can tell you a lot about why we wrote what. I see Jeremiah Nyegenya is here with me, who was with me there. I've then been honored to be part of the implementation in various categories now in the National Assembly. But in 5 minutes, I can't tell you all things. I can only tell you 4 quick things. And therefore, allow me to say those 4. First of all, do we require to change the Constitution? You answered it. 70% of you said yes. I can confirm to you that your views on that matter appear to accord with increasingly with the rest of Kenyans. The Legal Affairs Committee of Parliament, when they posed that question late last year, records that up to 70% answered yes. IDN and Infotrack, I think in March, when they posed that question, record that up to 65% answered in the affirmative. So in my view, therefore, and I agree with Wachira Maina, the question is that not if, but the question is, what do we need to change? How do we need to change it, and when? And unless we get those questions right, we will keep wanting to change it 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, because previously, the 2010 Constitution took us 20 years. So let us focus more on what, how, and when. In my respectful opinion, the idea of reviewing the Constitution is not on account of what some people have said, that it was said it was 20% bad or 20% good or vice versa. It is because, and that is the truth, when we were writing the Constitution, there were so many interests that no single group of persons got everything they wanted. The 2010 Constitution is a compromise document in every chapter, including the chapters that are giving us problems. And therefore the question should now be, having come out with a compromise document on any of the issues that are of concern, we must now ask, with the benefit of 10 years, has it achieved what we intended it to achieve? And if it has not, then we change. If it has, then we retain it. The idea of reviewing the Constitution is not necessarily that you change. You can actually review and say, we are satisfied, and you stay with it. On just 2 examples that I'll give you that Wachira spoke to, the question of system of government. How did we end up with a presidential system? Those of you who are in Parliament know what happened in Naivasha. The majority of Kenyans wanted a parliamentary system, and that is on record. But there are those who wanted a presidential system. It also happens that those who wanted a presidential system were against devolution. So there had to be a compromise. Give us devolution, we give you a presidential system. 10 years down the line, I am sure there's not a single person in this country who can doubt the benefits of devolution. And therefore, 10 years down the line, we can now revisit that question of system of government without bringing the question of devolution into it. Senate and National Assembly. Has it worked? I think everybody in this country knows that it has not worked. There has always been friction between the National Assembly and the Senate, with the Senate claiming to be the upper house, the National Assembly claiming that is a house of retirees. That is the truth. I have come into it. Yes? The irony is, the original formulation of the Senate was the upper house. And it was the upper house for the reasons that Wachira Maina explained. But curiously, most of my predecessors who are in the National Assembly, when they realized there will be another house that is above them, they said no. And they removed the Senate. Senate as a house did not come back from Naivasha. So what did we do? We said, okay, we will tremendously reduce all the powers of the Senate, including calling it the upper house. But we will retain it in one respect. Let it be the primary protector of devolution. So we ended up with the Senate having a sole mandate to protect devolution. The interpretations by the Supreme Court, the approach of the National Assembly has not even helped that mandate. So should we continue with that situation? Perhaps not. It is now time to re-examine, because many of my predecessors who hated the idea of the Senate subsequently became senators. And now every time they meet me, they say, why didn't you make us an upper house? And sometimes I get my records and remind them of the specific meetings and tell them, see what you said then. Now it is time to allow them to examine the role of the Senate without those issues. I mean, I can speak to about 20 or 25 reasons. Take the question of revenue allocation that was being spoken to by my brother, Mtula Kilonzo Jr. It may be so that you do not need to amend the constitution to increase the allocation to the counties. It may be so. But we also know that we deal with national governments whose primary starting point is to diminish funds that go to the county. That is why we put the minimum allocation of 15. Should we increase that minimum allocation in the constitution? Maybe yes. But there's a more fundamental question. The bigger problem now is not even the percentage of allocation. The bigger problem is when and whether that money comes. Money is allocated, but by the time it's 1 year or 1 month to the end of the financial year, only 40 or 50% of what was allocated has now come. And it's not unique to counties, even governmental departments. So that every year, and I'm a member of PAC, we review the work and we ask them, why didn't you spend 70% of your allocation? And they say, that allocation, by 2 weeks to the end of the financial year, had not come. How would we spend it? Isn't it time to consider not just percentages, but directives in terms of when that money should come? You can take one other example, and I will stop there in terms of examples. The Salaries and Remuneration Commission. When we put that commission in place, it was intended to bring sanity to the pay of public officers without any intimidation by anybody. Has SRC succeeded in that mandate? What has happened, one, is that there are instances, and there are many, that many public officers have succeeded in intimidating SRC to maintain the pay. And I speak as a member of the National Assembly, which is one of the culprits. But more importantly, the idea of SRC has now become a hindrance. The idea should be, if you fix the salaries, then when people negotiate a CBA, you should ensure they get it. But instead, what happens now is that SRC fixes the salary, CBAs are negotiated, whether it's with the county governors or with the national government. They are not implemented. When you come to see SRC, they say, ours is only to fix. Nobody takes responsibility for implementation. Now, just very quickly, in my view, 3 things should happen. One is any approach to changing the constitution must not be the approaches we've had in the National Assembly. Individual sectoral approaches of one person wanting to amend only one thing that benefit them. It must be a holistic approach, which considers the effect of that amendment on the entire constitution. 2, populist ideas of changes can be good, but they can be detrimental. There are things that Kenyans want to hear, and you can promise them that those are the things that will change. But when then it comes to the real change and they don't see them, they will get disheartened. I can tell you that Kenyans are a very interesting lot of people. Right now, if we ask, how many people agree that we should reduce the number of wards? Most of you might agree or not. How many people agree we should reduce the number of constituencies? How many people agree we should reduce the number of senators and governors? While many will agree, when you then ask them, can we remove your ward? Who agrees that we can remove their ward here? Can we remove your constituency? Can we remove your county? But it is very popular to say, let us reduce counties, wards, and all. I can tell you with the benefit of the committee of experts, you will never take away from Kenyans what you've given them. When we were working on the constitution and we wanted to use the district as the focus of devolution, and we realized there were 300, and we tried to reduce, they told us, if you reduce ours, we are rejecting that referendum. And that was the answer everywhere. When we wanted to remove CDF, they said, if that constitution is inconsistent with CDF, then leave that constitution and leave us with CDF. When we came to the provincial administration, about 70% told us, if you touch that one, and that is the only thing we know, then you stay with your constitution, we stay with the provincial administration. What am I saying? In this discussion, let us focus on how to circumvent those things. You will not be able to remove a county. You will not be able to remove a constituency. You will not be able to remove a ward. But you can design ways of reducing the numbers. You can design ways of circumventing it. And therefore, populist ideas like with the Third Way Alliance and all that, and Ekuro Ekot was with us, he knows that is impossible, is raising the hope without bringing the solution. My last point, and this point was made by Mutula. We now need to focus because time is of essence. The initiative in terms of change can be a popular initiative which takes very long. It can be a parliamentary-led initiative and there's right now none. Or it can be an initiative through the executive and others which then still comes to parliament and to the people.